Hey guys, tonight we climb aboard a Viking longship. Not as a heroic warrior or fierce shield maiden, but as, well you. A modern, soft-palmed human who's maybe gone kayaking once and didn't love it. Picture it. The wind howling across the North Sea, the deck beneath you hard as regret, and you, wrapped in scratchy wool, already rethinking all your life choices. You're not arriving in Valhalla, my friend. You're waking up somewhere just offshore the rugged coast of Norway, probably near a fjord with a name that has too many consonants and at least one sneaky silent K. The cold is the first thing you notice, sharp, wet, and bone deep like sleeping inside a fridge full of damp laundry. Your breath clouds the air, which might sound poetic, but mostly you just want a blanket that hasn't been soaked in sea spray and goat sweat. You try to sit up, only to discover you've spent the night wedged between two very large men who snore like overloaded oxen and smell like pickled onions left in the sun. The deck is your mattress, and judging by the bruises blooming across your back, it's not exactly posturepedic. You roll out from under a semi-conscious elbow, groaning, and knock your knee on an oar. Classic. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this sleepy little voyage travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch, cautiously, trying not to wake Bjorn, who may or may not be using your boot as a pillow. The longship creaks under its own weight and the gentle rocking makes your stomach lurch. You are, as the kids say, not built for this. The early morning light is silver and sharp, casting long shadows across the deck. Somewhere nearby, someone clears their throat with alarming volume and hawks something into the sea. Breakfast, you assume, is imminent, and you be right. A fire is smoldering in a clay bowl balanced dangerously between planks. Someone's brewing something that might be soup or might be punishment. Historians still argue whether these meals were planned or purely a matter of boiling whatever didn't crawl away fast enough. Mainstream Viking lore talks a lot about raids and glory, but very little about the fact that you have to start each day by scraping frost off your eyebrows and wondering if herring counts as a vegetable. Your fingers, numb and useless, fumble with your cloak pin. You're already missing zippers. You're offered a small wooden bowl. It holds something lumpy and gray with a distinct "caught this yesterday" aroma. That's the porridge. Next to it, a strip of smoked fish that looks like someone flattened a sardine with a hammer. Bon appetit. You try to sit cross-legged on the deck, but remember that your entire lower body is angry at you for choosing this timeline. A seagull screams overhead like it too has regrets. You take your first bite and are immediately struck by how every texture feels like a challenge. The porridge has the consistency of wet cement, and the fish is so chewy your jaw starts writing a resignation letter. Around you, the Vikings are already scarfing it down, muttering greetings in Old Norse, occasionally laughing at inside jokes you absolutely do not understand. You chuckle awkwardly and pretend to understand a joke about someone named Olaf and a goat. They stare at you. You stare at your bowl. You eat faster. The ship begins to stir in earnest. Gear is checked. Helmets are adjusted. Axes are sharpened with what seems like far too much excitement for this early in the day. A man with arms the size of tree trunks tests his grip on an oar, and it creaks ominously beneath his hands. You notice with rising dread that there are no chairs, no hammocks, no cushions. The entire seating arrangement is sit on a board and deal with it. Your spine sighs, and then someone calls your name, or, well, a version of it shouted through a beard thick enough to hide small animals. You're expected to row today. Surprise. The wind has picked up, salty and sharp, and you wonder if you'll get the hang of this by noon. You won't. But that's a problem for later. Right now, you focus on chewing fish leather and wondering whether your travel insurance covers Viking voyages. A gull lands on the bow, poops, and takes off again. Probably a metaphor. The ship groans again as the tide rolls in and your stomach does a flip. You adjust your wool cloak, inhale the sea air, which smells more like damp fur and ambition, and try to mentally prepare for whatever comes next. Which, spoiler alert, is rowing. A lot of it. You're still digesting that questionable porridge, emotionally more than physically, when a rough hand claps you on the shoulder. It's your turn at the oar. No warning. No training montage. Just 20 feet of hardened wood, sea-slicked ropes, and about a dozen men watching to see if you're about to humiliate yourself. You are. You shuffle over, careful not to slip on the fish scales that dot the deck like cruel banana peels. Your hands grip the oar and right away, you realize it's about as smooth as a porcupine in a burlap sack. The wood is rough, splintered from years of raids, storms, and what you can only assume was someone using it to settle a bet. A burly man with a braided beard, possibly named Hrothgar, probably not Steve, barks a command. Everyone starts rowing in sync, perfectly timed like it's muscle memory. You, however, flail like a toddler in a high chair. The oar dips too deep. Water sloshes over the edge and into your lap. You get a few nods of pity, but mostly just grunts of disapproval. Your arms already ache. You realize your gym's rowing machine lied to you. This is rowing. The breakfast you forced down earlier now sloshes uneasily in your gut. The ship pushes forward with each unified stroke, cutting through the water like a knife through yogurt. It should be poetic. It's not. It's soggy. As your row mates settle into a rhythm, you start noticing the smells. Yes, plural. Viking breakfast is less of a meal and more of a lingering atmospheric presence. There's the fish, of course. Then the damp wool, the seaweed tang, and somewhere, socks. You didn't even know they had socks. And yet you wish they didn't. You steal a glance around the Longship. Shields line the sides like scalloped armor, their painted surfaces chipped and sea-worn. Ropes coil neatly near the mast, and the sail, currently tied down, still smells faintly of seal fat and wind. Historians still argue whether sails were always made of wool or sometimes of linen soaked in animal fat, but either way your nose confirms the answer is unpleasant. Beside you a teenage boy grins and starts humming a low chant. Soon a few others join in. It's hypnotic, actually, part work song, part war hymn. The cadence helps you match the strokes better. You're still offbeat, but now it's more like off jazz than off disaster. The chant tells a story, something about Thor, a giant's goat, and a barrel of mead. You don't catch every word, but the vibe is clearly funny campfire tale meets power ballad. You try humming along, but your modern mouth can't quite bend around Old Norse vowels. You get a few raised eyebrows and one polite chuckle that feels like when someone lets a kid help with cooking. As the morning progresses, the rowing continues. There are no shifts, no scheduled breaks. You just row until your hands blister or someone yells something about a seal. You notice the older warriors wear thick, fur-lined gloves. You wear calluses. Occasionally, the Longship hits a swell, and the spray arcs over the bow, dousing the rowers in the front. You're lucky to be midship. Not because it's dry, oh no you're soaked, but because it means you're less likely to get launched overboard. Your legs cramp. Your arms burn. Your lower back is filing for divorce. And just as you start to think you might be getting the hang of this, the oar slips. You slam it straight into the ribs of the guy next to you. He pauses, stares. His mustache twitches like an animal sensing danger. And then he laughs. A deep belly laugh that shakes his whole frame. He slaps your back, nearly knocks you off the bench, and grins like you just joined the family. Congratulations. You're now oar slapper. You smile back, a little relieved, a lot exhausted. But the moment passes quickly because someone else yells out and points to the horizon. A whale? A rival ship? No. It's a floating log. But it's enough of a distraction for someone to shout a chant and get the oars moving faster. You dig deep, trying to keep up. The sea has no mercy and neither does peer pressure. You glance over at the helmsman who steers using a large side rudder. He's stoic, eyes scanning the sea like it owes him money. A raven perches near the mast, probably symbolic, possibly just tired. Ravens were sacred to Odin after all. But this one looks like it's here for the snacks. As the chant fades, your arms are jelly and your will to live is questionable. You imagine telling your modern-day friends about this. Yeah, I rode with Vikings for a few hours. No big deal. They'd never know you cried internally the entire time. You stop to wipe your brow only to find it's just more sea spray. You taste salt, sweat, and maybe regret. Someone offers you a piece of dried seaweed. You chew it numbly. It tastes like sadness and vitamins. But despite all of it, the ache, the cold, the relentless rowing, you start to feel present. Like you're not just observing history but surviving it. Badly. But still. The rowing finally stops. Not because anyone announced a break. Vikings weren't exactly big on wellness check-ins. But because the wind has picked up and it's time to raise the sail. You don't even realize at first, too dazed from the rowing to register anything but the burning in your shoulders and the odd sensation of your hands turning into claws. Then the shouting starts. Not angry shouting, more like organized chaos. Men scramble toward the mast, ropes are flung, knots are untied, and the great woolen sail begins to rise, flapping heavily like a sleeping bear stirring in its cave. You're still sitting there like a stunned pigeon when someone tosses you a line and points upward. Are ropes. A timeless tool. Except you've only used ropes at rock climbing gyms and, well, let's just say this is not a harnessed experience. You pull, trying to mimic what others are doing. The sail billows slowly, catching the wind with a low whump that makes your chest flutter. It's impressive, really, this raw physics of wood, wind, and manpower. The Longship groans, surges forward, and you realize, now you're sailing. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean resting. The moment the oars are stowed, new tasks emerge. Buckets are passed to bail out water collecting in the ship's belly. You're handed a sponge, well, an animal pelt that kind of acts like one, and pointed toward a puddle. Welcome to Viking janitorial duty. As you mop, you listen. One man is recounting a dream he had. Something about a serpent eating a moon. Everyone nods like this is totally normal breakfast conversation. Another scratches runes into a wooden beam. You sneak a peek. They look like angry letters from a fantasy novel. Historians still argue whether most Vikings could read runes or if only a few were literate. Judging by this guy's frown of concentration, he's either writing poetry or trying to remember if it's before raid or after plunder. Now that you're not rowing, you notice more about the ship itself. The hull is shallow, built for speed and beach landings. The planks are clinker-built, overlapping like scales, and sealed with a pungent mixture of tar, wool, and animal hair. It smells like burnt bacon and betrayal. You shuffle to the side and peer over the edge. The sea is steel gray, speckled with white caps. The waves slap the hull rhythmically. You feel the ship roll and sway beneath your feet like a giant breathing. Someone offers you a turn at steering. You laugh. Then you realize they're serious. The rudder, actually a side-mounted steering oar, is surprisingly awkward. You grip it, trying not to look as terrified as you feel. Every slight adjustment sends the ship tilting. You overcorrect. The ship veers. Someone behind you swears gently in Norse. You think it might have been a compliment. The wind kicks up again, flinging sea spray into your face. It's like a facial from Poseidon if Poseidon hated you. You squint into the horizon and think. No GPS, no compass, no radar. Just stars, shoreline, and a gut feeling. It's absurd. And somehow it works. The helmsman returns and takes over with one hand, cool as a cucumber. You step back, nursing your pride in your wrists. You grab a seat, well, a vaguely dry plank, and try to catch your breath. A man sits beside you and starts talking. You catch maybe every third word. See, England, fat sheep. It sounds like a plan or a wish list. Either way, there's enthusiasm. He pulls out a pouch and offers you something. Dried mushrooms? You hesitate. Are they food? Medicine? A hallucinogenic vision quest? He just shrugs and eats one. You follow suit. The taste is earthy, bitter, and very possibly imaginary. The crew passes around a drinking horn filled with mead. You take a cautious sip. It's sweet, a little fizzy with a hint of fermented mystery. It burns your throat and warms your chest. You immediately want a second sip, which is probably the point. Someone starts singing again, this time slower, more melodic. The words blur together like wind and wave, but the feeling is unmistakable. Shared hardship, strange joy, and a complete absence of indoor plumbing. You lean back, your soaked cloak heavy on your shoulders, and for the first time you almost feel okay. Sure, you're damp, cold, blistered, and confused, but the ship is cutting through the sea like it knows where it's going, and the crew seems less likely to throw you overboard today than they did yesterday. That's progress. Then comes the smell. Oh, the smell. One of the men removes his boots, revealing woolen socks soaked in what you can only assume is a marinade of seawater, foot, and old goat. The stench is immediate. Even the raven hops further down the mast. You gag discreetly. He smiles proud. Apparently, this is a sign of a seasoned traveler. You smile back weakly and try to breathe through your mouth. The clouds begin to gather overhead. The North Sea doesn't do sunny afternoons. It does mood lighting and imminent doom. A few drops fall. The crew doesn't even react. You pull your cloak tighter and try to act like this is fine. Totally fine. As the ship continues forward, a man stands and points toward a distant strip of land. It's faint, barely more than a smudge on the horizon. But there it is, the coastline. Is it home? A target? Just a random landmark? Historians still debate whether Viking voyages followed trade routes or were largely improvisational. Judging by the excited murmurs, it's important. And possibly sheep-related. You sit up straighter, spine protesting. The crew buzzes with energy, and someone sharpens a blade, the sound scraping through the air like a warning. You just want a nap. And a towel. Preferably dry. The coastline grows larger with every breath of wind, but there's no cheering. No drumroll. No cinematic land ho. Just a quiet tension that settles across the ship like mist. You're not approaching a vacation resort. You're approaching a place that doesn't want to see you, yet. No one gives you a briefing. That's not the Viking way. You learn by doing. Or, in your case, by nervously copying the guy next to you and hoping you don't touch something sacred or sharp. One of the older warriors rises and begins smearing something thick and brownish across his arms. You think it's war paint at first. You think wrong. It's fish oil, repellent for bugs and allegedly for spirits. You're handed a ladle of it and told to apply it liberally. You do. And immediately regret it. The stench is indescribable. A sort of fermented fish meets candle wax combo that sticks to your skin with cheerful permanence. You're now a walking snack for every gull within 5 miles. The ship slows as the water shallows. The sail is lowered with a thunk, and oars return to their not-so-rightful place. You groan as you resume rowing, legs stiff, arms sore. But this isn't a rowing for distance kind of effort. This is precision rowing. Coastal, stealthy, deliberate. Rocks appear, jagged and waiting like nature's version of passive-aggressive border patrol. You avoid eye contact. Just in case. You finally reach a sheltered inlet. The men leap from the ship and splash into waist-deep water with surprising grace. You follow. It's less graceful. More flailing. Your boots fill with icy sea water, Your cloak balloons behind you like a sodden cape, and your dignity is now somewhere on the ocean floor. Feet squelching, you help pull the longship ashore using thick ropes and muttered curses. The ship glides up the sand like it knows the routine. It's done this before. You haven't. Your reward is a face full of kelp. Once the ship is secured, everything shifts. Men begin unloading gear: axes, small tents, crates of supplies. A fire is quickly lit using flint and steel, and soon the scent of smoke and smoked fish replaces your fish oil perfume. Marginal improvement. You're handed a spear. No instructions. Just a spear. You hold it like it's a novelty prop. The man beside you adjusts your grip without comment, then nods. Approval? Pity? Hard to say. And now comes the waiting. You sit on a damp log, watching as scouts vanish into the woods. The rest of the crew lounges, eats, sharpens blades, or carves strange symbols into driftwood. A younger warrior squats by a stream, carefully washing what you assume is blood from his tunic. Or maybe wine. Historians still argue about Viking hygiene. Some claim they were unusually clean for their time, others that they smelled like despair wrapped in fur. Based on current olfactory evidence, it's probably both. You try to dry your boots by the fire. They steam ominously like a curse being lifted. Your socks, however, are a lost cause. You peel them off, wring them out, and consider setting them adrift as a symbolic offering to the gods of footwear. As night begins to creep in, a hush falls over the camp. Someone points to the sky, where a red-orange sliver of sun dips beneath the horizon. The man next to you mutters something in Old Norse that sounds reverent, or possibly bored. Dinner is a shared pot of stew made from barley, onions, and chunks of something you don't identify. It tastes vaguely meaty, oddly sweet, and mostly smoky. Not bad, actually. You eat it with your fingers, which are still coated in fish oil. You pretend not to notice. After dinner, the mood lifts. A few men start a rhythmic clapping. Someone pulls out a lyre, plucks a few twangy notes, and begins to sing. The song is slow, mournful, about a sea creature who fell in love with a drowned warrior. It's kind of sweet, kind of creepy. Perfect Viking ballad material. Laughter follows. One man tells a story about a raid that went sideways when a herd of goats stampeded through the village and into the Longship. Another talks about a time he mistook a monk for a very pale ghost. You smile, though you're only catching the gist. As darkness fully settles in, the warriors wrap themselves in cloaks and furs, bedded down near the fire or under the boat. There's no tent for you, but someone tosses you a deerskin. You wrap it around your shoulders and find a spot on a patch of moss, using your bundled cloak as a pillow. You stare up at the stars, the cold gnawing at your nose, your fish oil smeared skin prickling against the night air. The longship rests nearby, quiet now, its dragon head silhouetted against the sky. For a brief moment, lying there among strangers who still haven't decided if you're useful or amusing, you feel it, that quiet, strange pride of having made it this far. The fire crackles, someone snores, and a raven croaks from a tree above. You think about tomorrow and the 100 ways it could go horribly wrong. Then again, that's just Viking Tuesday. Morning arrives not with a gentle yawn but a sharp, salty slap to your face. The North Sea breeze cuts through your makeshift bedding like a cold reminder that sleep on a Viking expedition is a precious and rare commodity. You open your eyes to a gray sky mottled with low-hanging clouds, the kind that promise drizzle and more than a little discomfort. The camp stirs quickly. Men stretch, groan, and begin their morning routines without any polite good mornings or coffee rituals. Instead, you're handed a wooden bowl filled with something that vaguely resembles porridge but tastes like slightly burnt hay mixed with the remnants of last night's stew. It's the Viking breakfast special. You eat it anyway, partly because you're hungry, partly because the stench of fish oil hasn't entirely dissipated and you need all the help you can get to keep your stomach settled. Your hands still bear the sticky residue of yesterday's fish oil application. You rub them on your wool tunic, which doesn't do much except spread the smell around. It's clear that hygiene is a complicated topic aboard this voyage. One warrior scrubs his teeth with a twig dipped in salt water, while another grins at you, proudly showing off his meticulously braided beard. Historians still argue whether Vikings were as unhygienic as pop culture suggests or if they had their own standards that just don't match modern ones. Breakfast over, the crew gathers around for what passes as a morning briefing. You lean in hoping to catch the gist. The plan: move inland cautiously, scout for resources, and avoid any unnecessary skirmishes. Simple enough, except that cautiously part means trudging through thick forests, muddy ground, and a lot of bugs that seem determined to test your resolve. You grab your spear and follow the group, your boots sinking into the soft earth with each step. The forest smells rich: pine needles, damp moss, and something faintly metallic. It's a sensory overload compared to the endless expanse of sea you just left behind. You try to keep pace but quickly realize that your legs aren't used to this kind of terrain. Every root and stone feels like a trap, and your muscles ache in ways you didn't know possible. As you trudge forward, a scout points out an odd mushroom growing at the base of a tree. "Eat this and you'll see the world differently," he jokes, half serious. You politely decline, remembering last night's mystery mushrooms and your wish to keep reality as stable as possible. The group pauses by a stream. One man pulls out a small wooden box filled with strange leaves and roots. He crushes them between his fingers and explains it's a traditional remedy for fatigue and muscle soreness. You try some, and after a moment you feel a subtle warmth spreading through your limbs, a gentle nudge from nature itself. The Vikings were nothing if not resourceful with their local flora. Suddenly there's a rustling in the underbrush. Everyone freezes. You hold your spear tighter, heart pounding. It turns out to be only a curious deer, which darts away with a flick of its tail. You exhale slowly, feeling a mix of relief and a strange kind of disappointment. You were half expecting a fierce rival or at least a wolf. The day continues with more walking, more mud, and an ever-present awareness of being far from the comforts of home, or any home at all. Your cloak is heavier with moisture, your feet wetter, and your patience thinner. Yet there's something oddly comforting in the routine, in the shared hardship and quiet determination of the crew. By late afternoon, you arrive at a clearing where the Vikings set up a temporary camp. The men immediately begin gathering wood and preparing a fire. You help where you can, grateful for the simple task after hours of stumbling through the forest. As the fire crackles to life, a man approaches with a small pouch of dried fish and dark bread. You accept it gratefully, knowing it's the best meal you'll get until tomorrow. You sit back, feeling the warmth on your face and the steady rhythm of the crew settling in. One of the warriors pulls out a horn and begins pouring mead. The golden liquid catches the fading light, and the campmates raise their horns in a quiet toast to the journey, to the gods, and perhaps to their own stubborn survival. You take a sip, feeling the familiar sweet burn that lingers and spreads. It's enough to soothe the aches and stir a faint smile. As night falls again, you lie back on your bedroll, the sounds of the forest mingling with distant laughter and song. You think about the day, the struggle, the small victories, the odd camaraderie. It's a far cry from the life you know, and yet, somehow, it's starting to feel like something you might just survive. Historians still argue about how often Vikings actually engaged in combat during these voyages versus simply exploring or trading. From what you've seen, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, with plenty of time spent simply being out here, day after day, far from everything familiar. You close your eyes, the forest breathing around you, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. The morning light filters softly through the trees, casting long shadows that dance quietly as you stir awake. You expect birdsong, but instead hear the faint clink of metal and low murmurs, the camp already stirring. You rub the sleep from your eyes and try to ignore the damp chill settling into your bones. This is no cozy cabin. This is the edge of the wild, where comfort is a forgotten concept. Breakfast is a modest affair, more dried fish and bread. You nibble cautiously, recalling last night's stew with some nostalgia. The Vikings seem to savor their meals with a kind of pragmatic appreciation, as if each bite is a small victory over the ever-present threat of hunger. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and eyes like storm clouds, calls the crew together. Today's task: reconnaissance of the nearby village rumored to be ripe for plunder, or trade if the gods are kind. You tighten your grip on your spear, a silent prayer that your clumsiness won't get you noticed. The journey to the village is a slow, deliberate march. The forest gives way to open fields dotted with thatched huts and small gardens. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, and you catch glimpses of villagers going about their routines. Children chasing chickens, women tending fires, men repairing tools. It all seems so peaceful, almost mundane. You watch from the tree line, your breath shallow. The villagers don't seem to notice you, or maybe they do and choose not to care. It's a strange feeling, being invisible yet intensely visible all at once. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were as swift and violent as popular lore suggests, or if they often involved lengthy periods of observation and cautious negotiation. A scout whispers that the village elders meet in a large communal hall near the center. You're tasked with watching this building, noting any signs of defense or wealth. Your heart races as you observe men wearing simple but sturdy clothing, their faces weathered and serious. No grand treasures, just the quiet dignity of daily life. As the sun dips lower, the crew retreats, careful to avoid detection. You're exhausted but exhilarated. The reality of the raid hasn't yet settled in. For now, it's just the thrill of the unknown. Back at camp, preparations begin for the night. Men sharpen weapons and mend clothes, their faces focused yet relaxed in a way that belies the coming challenges. Someone passes around a small horn of mead, the sweet liquid sparking soft laughter and light-hearted tales. You sit near the fire, warming your hands, feeling the steady pulse of life around you. Despite the hardships, there's a bond forming, a shared experience that transcends language and background. You catch yourself smiling at the thought. Later, as darkness cloaks the forest, the singing begins again. The mournful ballads, the stories of gods and heroes, weave a gentle spell over the weary crew. You listen, letting the rhythm and words lull your mind into a calm place. You think about the village you watched, the lives intersecting with yours only briefly, caught between fear and curiosity. It's a reminder that history isn't just about battles and kings, but about people trying to survive and find meaning in their days. You settle into your deerskin, the night sounds a comforting embrace. Tomorrow holds more uncertainty, but for now you rest. The dawn breaks with a soft pink glow, filtering through the canopy and painting the camp in gentle hues. You awake to the faint murmur of voices and the clatter of armor being donned. Today's the day, the long-anticipated moment when theory meets practice. You shuffle over to the fire where a pot of lukewarm broth awaits. The flavor is thin but nourishing, the warmth seeping slowly through your chilled limbs. You sip quietly, your mind already racing through what you've learned so far, and what you're about to face. The leader gathers the crew for a final word. His voice is steady but carries a weight that silences all chatter. "We strike at first light," he says, eyes scanning each face. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach, a mix of fear and adrenaline. As the longship readies for departure, you take a moment to absorb your surroundings. The rhythmic creaking of wood, the salty tang of the sea, the distant cries of seabirds. It's almost peaceful, almost. Once aboard, the rowers take their places with practiced ease. You find yourself beside a grizzled veteran who offers a brief nod. No need for words. The understanding is silent and mutual. The ship cuts through the water with smooth efficiency. You focus on your stroke, trying to match the steady tempo. The spray cools your face, mingling with the sweat from your efforts. Your muscles burn, but the rhythm is hypnotic. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were chaotic scrambles or highly organized assaults. From what you see, it's a bit of both, a disciplined chaos with room for individual valor and occasionally blunders. As land appears, the crew falls silent. The shoreline looms, a mix of forest and rocky cliffs. You can almost taste the tension, thick and electric. The ship glides silently into a sheltered cove. Oars dip and lift in unison, barely disturbing the water. You leap onto the wet sand, spear at the ready. The village is small but fortified with a wooden palisade. You glimpse sentries pacing atop the walls, their faces alert. Your heart hammers as you scan for weaknesses. The commander signals a halt. Scouts move forward, disappearing into the shadows. You wait, muscles taut, senses heightened. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours. The forest holds its breath. Then a sudden shout. A sentry spotted the intruders. Chaos erupts. The clash is swift and brutal, but not without a grim poetry. Metal rings against wood, war cries echo through the trees, and the scent of smoke mingles with salt and sweat. You thrust your spear, parry an incoming blow, and duck beneath a wild swing. Time slows, then speeds up, your actions driven by instinct more than thought. Somewhere nearby, a man laughs, a fierce, wild sound that sends a shiver down your spine. Victory and peril dance hand in hand. The raid unfolds in a blur, the lines between friend and foe blurred by the chaos. When it ends, you stand amid the aftermath, smoke rising, the distant cries fading, and your own breath ragged but victorious. You glance around, the reality settling in. You made it through a day on a Viking longship and lived to tell the tale. The adrenaline from the raid still hums faintly beneath your skin as the crew gathers to assess the spoils. The village lies quiet now, smoke curling upward in lazy spirals from a few hastily abandoned hearths. You wipe your spear clean on your tunic, noticing the faint shimmer of gold leaf caught between the cracks of your wooden shield, a small, unexpected trophy. You move through the aftermath with a kind of detached curiosity, noting the odd details that rarely make it into the stories. A child's wooden toy left behind, a basket of half-rotted apples, a quiver of arrows discarded in the rush. These small human touches remind you that the people here had lives that mattered, lives you briefly disturbed. Your thoughts drift as the sun climbs higher, warming the air and chasing away the damp chill. Around you, men divide the loot with practiced efficiency, their voices low but animated. There's laughter too, a rough camaraderie born from shared danger and success. As you settle near the fire, someone offers you a piece of smoked reindeer meat. The taste is smoky and rich, oddly comforting after the day's chaos. You chew thoughtfully, savoring the moment's simplicity. Historians still debate how Vikings viewed their raids, not just as violent conquests but as necessary parts of their economy and culture. Some argue they were early entrepreneurs in a rugged landscape, others focus on the raw survival instincts driving their actions. You lean back, eyes on the flickering flames, and wonder about the lives you interrupted. What stories did those villagers tell each other at night? Did they speak of gods watching over them, or simply hope for a safer tomorrow? The camp grows quieter as evening falls. Men wash in the nearby stream, rubbing salt and grime from their skin. The scent of pine and earth fills the air, mingling with the faint smoke from the fire. You stretch out on your bedroll, muscles still tense but slowly unwinding. Nearby, a bard strums a simple tune on a lyre, the notes soft and repetitive, like waves lapping at the shore. The night wraps around you gently, the chaos of the day fading into a distant memory. You close your eyes, the sounds of the forest and the crackling fire lulling you toward rest. In this moment, you realize that surviving a day on a Viking longship isn't just about strength or skill. It's about resilience, about finding peace amid uncertainty. The morning dawns with a muted gray light, the kind that seems to hover just above the horizon like a soft blanket. You awaken slowly, your body stiff but somehow still willing to move. The camp feels quieter today, the aftermath of yesterday's raid settling into a tentative calm. The fire from the night before has burned down to embers. Smoke curls lazily upward, blending with the mist that hangs low over the forest floor. You stretch and rub your hands together, trying to warm them against the chill that clings stubbornly to your skin. Around you, the others begin to stir, some with groans of soreness, others moving silently as if unwilling to disturb the stillness. Breakfast is sparse, some hard bread and watered-down ale, but it's enough to steady your nerves. The bread cracks beneath your teeth, dry and tasteless, but the warmth of the ale eases the ache in your gut. You listen to the murmurs around you, catching fragments of conversation about the next steps. Repairs to the ship, plans for future raids, rumors of Frankish patrols moving north. Today's focus is maintenance, repairing the ship, mending clothes, and tending to minor wounds. A few of the more seriously injured lie beneath pine bough shelters, tended by the camp healer who murmurs low prayers over poultices and salves made of herbs and lard. Their groans are muted, their bandages stained with the memory of yesterday's violence. You join a group tasked with patching the longship's sail. A large piece of woven will stretch taut across wooden beams. The fabric is rough beneath your fingers, and your knuckles ache as you sew thick thread through weather-worn seams. Beside you, a boy no older than 16 hums softly as he works, his hands deft despite fresh blisters. The smell of tar is thick in the air as others heat it over open flames and apply fresh resin to the hull, sealing cracks and smoothing over splinters gouged by rocks and time. Working side by side, the men begin to talk, not with the bravado of battle, but the stories of men who've seen the edge of the world and come back changed. You learn about the silk routes in the east, where Vikings traded furs and amber for exotic spices and fine silks. They speak of Constantinople's golden domes, of strange foods and stranger customs, of elephants in the markets and priests in robes that shimmer like moonlight. The tales sound almost unbelievable, like a dreamscape of endless adventure and danger, and yet the glint in their eyes says they are not exaggerating. Amid the practical tasks, you notice a peculiar ritual unfolding. One of the older warriors, Ulf, dips a small bundle of herbs, juniper, sage, and what looks like dried lavender, into the resin. He waves it slowly around the sail, his lips moving in a low chant, words from a tongue you do not know but feel in your bones. You're told it's a blessing, meant to protect the ship from storms and ill fortune. Some scoff under their breath, others bow their heads respectfully. Historians still argue whether such superstitions were widespread or limited to a few devout individuals. But here, in the smell of smoke and the whisper of wind, the line between belief and ritual blurs. As the day wears on, you grow tired but find comfort in the rhythm of repair and camaraderie. There's something soothing about the repetitive motions, the scraping of tools, the soft rustle of wool, the murmur of voices that ebb and flow like the tide. Even the longship, resting half-pulled onto the shore, seems to breathe beneath your hands. Later, you take a moment alone by the water's edge. The sea is calm, its surface like glass reflecting the overcast sky. A solitary gull wheels above, its cry distant and mournful. You dip your fingers into the cool water, watching a small fish dart away. The chill bites at your skin, but you welcome it. It's real, grounding, a reminder that you are still here. It's a rare moment of peace in an otherwise relentless journey. You think back to the village, the raid, and the strange balance between violence and everyday life that defines this existence. One moment you are locked in deadly combat. The next you are mending sails or helping a wounded friend bind his ribs. It's a world far removed from your own, yet the threads of human experience, fear, hope, resilience, bind you across time. As twilight descends, the camp settles once more. The scent of pine and resin mingles with the salty air, and the sounds of laughter and song rise softly from the fire. Someone strums a lyre, its tones drifting through the trees like smoke. The boy who hummed earlier now sings in a language older than stone, and the others join in, voices low and rough like river rocks worn smooth by time. You curl up on your bedroll, the fabric rough but familiar. A wolf howls in the far distance, a sound that blends with the crackle of flames and the quiet hum of the sea. Your eyes close slowly, the gentle cadence of voices and crackling flames carrying you toward rest. And somewhere just before sleep takes you, you whisper a silent promise, to remember this life in all its harshness and beauty. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows as you trudge back to the camp after a day spent foraging in the surrounding woods. Your pack is heavy with roots, berries, and a small catch of fish, modest but essential contributions to the crew's meager supplies. Your boots sink slightly into the damp forest floor with each step. Fallen leaves stick to your calves, and the late-season insects buzz lazily in the still, humid air. Sweat clings to your back beneath the rough wool of your tunic, and your legs ache from hours of weaving through brambles and uneven terrain. Yet there's a quiet satisfaction in the weight on your shoulders, not treasure or silver, but sustenance. A different kind of victory. The forest is alive with subtle sounds, the rustling of leaves, distant bird calls, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. A squirrel chatters high in the canopy, and you pause momentarily, hand resting on the hilt of your knife. You move cautiously, mindful of both wild animals and the ever-present possibility of rival bands or hostile locals. The tension is a constant companion, a low hum beneath every heartbeat. Every now and then, you crouch to examine animal tracks pressed faintly into the mud, deer, perhaps, or wild boar. You've learned to read the woods like a language, bent grass, broken twigs, the faint scent of fur or decay carried on the breeze. The skills sharpen each day, survival etching itself into muscle memory. Back at camp, the spoils are sorted and stored with care. Two older warriors salt the fish and hang it beside the fire to dry. Others inspect the wild herbs you've gathered, murmuring approval as they recognize plants used to flavor stews or soothe inflammation. The food will not last long, but it offers a brief reprieve from the monotony of salt pork and dried fish. You savor the fresh taste of berries, the sharp tang of wild garlic, as if each bite were a small rebellion against the harshness of Viking life. A pot is soon hung over the fire, filled with roots and a few strips of rabbit meat from another group's hunt. As it simmers, a warm, earthy aroma fills the camp. Men wander closer, drawn by the promise of real food. The chatter builds, laughter coming easier now that the sun has dipped and the day's labors are behind you. In the fading light, the crew gathers to share stories around the fire. A burly man named Rolf, whose voice is as deep as a bear's growl, recounts a tale of a forgotten invention. A rudimentary navigation device crafted from bones and carved wood, said to guide lost sailors through dense fog. He describes how it spun gently in water, pointing the way home when all else failed. His eyes glint with memory or imagination. You can't quite tell which. Whether it's truth or legend, the story sparks quiet wonder. Younger warriors lean forward, eyes wide. Someone tosses a pine cone into the fire, and sparks leap into the night like fireflies. Historians still argue whether Vikings relied primarily on such tools or more on natural signs like the sun, stars, and ocean currents. Either way, it's clear they possessed a remarkable understanding of their environment. Tales like Rolf's blur the line between magic and science, between myth and memory. And around a fire, after a hard day, no one bothers to question it too deeply. You listen, entranced by the blend of myth and reality, the way the past and present weave together in these quiet moments. The firelight flickers across faces marked by soot and sweat, eyes reflecting both fatigue and fierce determination. These men, hardened by storms and steel, now speak softly, remembering home, old friends, and ships lost to the sea. As darkness deepens, a soft wind stirs the branches overhead. The smell of pine needles and damp earth fills the air, grounding you in this wild, untamed world. The Longship, anchored just beyond the tree line, creaks faintly in the distance, its silhouette etched against the moonlit sea. You feel its presence even from here, a silent sentinel waiting to carry you once more into the unknown. You lie back on your bedroll, the cool ground pressing gently against your skin. The crackling fire, the murmured voices, and the rustle of leaves compose a lullaby unlike any other. Your thoughts drift to the Longship waiting silently at the shore, a vessel of wood and dreams, carrying you through this strange, beautiful chaos. You close your eyes, the steady rhythm of night enfolding you like a warm, worn cloak. The dawn is a faint wash of pale blue when you awaken, the chill of night still lingering in the air. The camp stirs slowly, men stretching and shaking off sleep like bears emerging from a long hibernation. The scent of damp earth and burning wood is thick, a reminder of the fire that burned through the night. Your breath clouds in front of your face as you rise from your bedroll, pulling your cloak tighter around your shoulders. Dew clings to the grass in your boots as you shuffle toward the fire pit, where a few early risers are stoking the embers back to life. The warmth is welcome, though it battles feebly against the morning cold. Today is different. Today you learn about the Vikings' intricate system of signals and communication. It's not just grunts and shouts. It's a symphony of horns, drums, and hand gestures finely tuned to the needs of the Longship and its crew. This hidden language holds the difference between chaos and cohesion when battle breaks upon the shore. A line is formed along the beach. The commander, his fur-lined cloak billowing in the wind, walks its length with the authority of one who has survived more campaigns than most can count. In his hand is a curved horn, carved with runes and bound in bronze. He raises it to his lips and blows, a long, mournful note that rolls across the water like thunder. The sound resonates in your chest, ancient and primal. You take your turn with a smaller horn. The first few tries are awkward, your breath too shallow, your grip too tight. But with guidance, the sound grows steadier. Deep and resonant, your note carries across the bay, startling a flock of seabirds into the air. Around you, others practice specific patterns. 2 short blasts for attention, a long one for regrouping, a quick staccato for warning. The commander explains how these signals could coordinate maneuvers in battle or alert the crew to approaching storms. On the open sea or amidst the chaos of combat, such methods were vital. You try to imagine the tension when every note carries the weight of life or death, when a single missed signal could doom the entire crew. Historians still argue whether these systems were standardized or varied wildly between clans and voyages. From what you see, there's a deliberate structure, passed from elder to youth, taught not just in words but in muscle memory. In the afternoon, you join the blacksmith's apprentice, a wiry man with soot-streaked arms and hands like ironwood, to watch weapons being forged. His face is lined with grime, but his eyes are sharp and focused as he works the bellows. The forge roars to life, glowing like the heart of the earth itself. Metal sings under the hammer, each strike a note in a song of fire and strength. You feel the heat radiating from the forge, a stark contrast to the cool sea breeze curling through the open smithy. He speaks as he works, sharing a curious tradition. Many Viking swords were named, Grammar, Turfing, Kvernbit, each with its own legend. Some were said to thirst for blood, others to sing when drawn. He points to a newly finished blade cooling in oil, its surface rippling with folded patterns. A blade is more than steel, he says, it remembers. Treat it poorly and it will turn on you. It's a curious blend of superstition and craftsmanship, revealing the deep connection between warrior and weapon. You help grind the edge of a practiced spear, the repetition soothing, the weight of the tool familiar in your hands. Later, you help mend a torn sail stretched out on the grass like the skin of a great beast. The coarse fabric prickles your fingers, and your stitches are uneven at first, but the others don't chide you. Instead, they sing, a low, haunting melody that ebbs and flows with the rhythm of the work. It's not loud, not celebratory, but solemn, reverent. A work song, perhaps, or something older still. Their voices blend into a kind of prayer, not to a god, but to the ship itself, the vessel that will carry them through storms and into the jaws of battle. As the sun sets, you stand on the shore watching the Longship silhouetted against the fiery sky. The dragonhead prow casts a fearsome shadow, but the ship itself seems tranquil in the golden light, gently rocking on the tide. The gentle lap of waves and the distant cry of gulls create a serene soundtrack, a moment of stillness before the next adventure. You lie down beneath a blanket of stars, the cool night air wrapping around you. The stories of signals and swords mingle with the whispering wind, carrying you softly towards sleep. You wake to the sharp scent of salt and wood smoke mingling in the cool morning air. The Longship is ready to sail again, its hull freshly caulked and the sail patched with stubborn care. Today the journey continues, not just across water but through the rituals and routines that kept the Viking world turning. The camp moves with quiet efficiency, the chill of morning broken by the soft hiss of embers being coaxed back to life. You rub sleep from your eyes as you join the others near the fire pit, where a thin rye porridge bubbles in a blackened pot. It's simple fare, flavored only with a pinch of salt and a few dried herbs, but it's hot and filling. You join the crew in a curious morning custom, the sharing of tales and blessings to the gods, whispered over steaming bowls of porridge. Each man takes a moment before eating, bowing his head slightly, not dramatically but with practiced reverence. Murmured invocations drift through the camp like morning mist, calls to Thor for strength, to Njord for calm seas, to Freya for swift fortune. One man, older and deeply scarred, speaks to a long-dead brother rather than any god. Another simply closes his eyes in silence. You feel the weight of these quiet prayers pressing gently against your chest. Not just superstition, but a language of hope, a ritual of belonging. You murmur your own uncertain wish, unsure if anyone, or anything, is listening but feeling better for having said it all the same. Nearby, a skald recites an old saga, his voice soft but steady. He speaks in measured tones, his words rising and falling like the tide. The tale tells of Havel, the wave-bearer, a mythical sea creature said to guide lost sailors home, appearing only to those who have truly lost their way. Its eyes, he says, shine like fireflies over water, and its breath can calm even the fiercest gale. You're told the story is part myth, part practical advice disguised in legend, reminding sailors to watch for the presence of whale pods, shifting currents, or the sudden stillness before a change in wind. Historians still debate whether such myths were purely storytelling or coded survival strategies passed through generations. The skald finishes with a verse about the sea's favor belonging to those who listen. and for a long moment no one speaks. The waves, lapping gently at the shore, seem to echo his final words. Later, you help the cook prepare a simple meal of salted fish and flatbread. The kitchen, a rough circle of stones and iron pots, is small and smoky, filled with the scent of herbs, burning wood, and the faint tang of fish oils. The cook, a stocky, good-natured woman with a voice rougher than most of the warriors, teaches you how to get the fish cleanly and mash wild onion into the dough. She tells you Vikings often preserved food by drying, salting, or smoking, not out of choice but necessity. You don't win battles on an empty gut, she says, handing you a hot piece of flatbread blistered from the fire. She grins as she shares a quirky fact. In Iceland, they eat hakarl, fermented shark meat so pungent that even hardened raiders gag on it. It's an acquired taste, she adds, laughing. Mostly acquired because there's nothing else left. As the day wears on, you participate in a practical lesson on knots and ropes. The ship's bosun, a man with massive hands and a voice like gravel, demonstrates each knot slowly, his fingers working with patient precision. There's the bowline for fast mooring, the clove hitch for securing sails, the figure eight to stop a line from running free. You fumble at first, fingers stiff and clumsy, the coarse rope biting at your palms. But soon you find a rhythm. Over under, pull through, tighten. Your hands begin to understand what your eyes couldn't. Each knot tells a story, a safeguard against disaster, a trick passed down from sailor to sailor, tested by salt and wind. This one saved my life in a storm off Gotland, the bosun mutters, tightening a line. And this one lost a friend when he didn't tie it right. Evening falls softly, the sky streaked with lavender and gold. The wind has quieted, and the waves break gently against the hull. The Longship rocks gently on the water, its wooden frame creaking like a living thing. Crew members tend to their tasks in quiet pairs, coiling ropes, sharpening blades, or sharing bits of bread and dried fruit as the last light slips beneath the horizon. You lie back on the deck, arms folded behind your head, the cool planks of the ship pressing against your spine. Through the faint gaps in the sails weave, the stars begin to peek through, bright and watchful. A few voices rise in song, low and steady, more lullaby than shanty. You don't know the words, but the melody carries you like a current. The mix of ancient rituals, practical skills, and quiet moments of reflection creates a rhythm that lulls you deeper into the Viking world, a world as harsh as it is fascinating. The dawn greets you with a pale pink light that spills softly over the horizon. You wake to the creaking of the Longship's timbers and the gentle slap of waves against the hull. A thin mist clings to the surface of the water, catching the light like spun silver. The air is cool and damp, the kind that settles deep into your clothes and bones. Today's focus is on the strange and sometimes surprising laws and customs that govern Viking life aboard the ship, and how you, a newcomer, might struggle to keep up. You shake the sleep from your limbs and join the others near the bow, where the captain stands, silhouetted against the rising sun. His voice is calm but firm, carrying the authority of someone who's weathered storms both at sea and among men. He begins to explain the unwritten code that rules life aboard the Longship, rules passed down not in ink but in tradition and tone. There are expectations here carved into the wood of the ship itself. Share what you have. Eat in silence unless you have something worth saying. Keep your place on the benches clean and your weapons closer still. If you are on watch, you do not sleep. If you are eating, you share. If you argue, you do it with words first, and fists only if needed. Every man has a voice, but decisions are made by consensus, often after long discussions fueled by strong ale and louder opinions. It's not the hierarchy outsiders might expect. Even the captain's word, while respected, isn't absolute. You try to imagine the delicate balance of authority and democracy, where one wrong move could disrupt the fragile harmony that keeps dozens of men from turning on each other in close quarters. A curious detail catches your ear. The captain recounts how in times of dispute, especially when evidence was scarce, Vikings might resort to trial by ordeal. One method, he says with a wry smile, was holding a red-hot iron bar. Walk 3 steps with it, and if your wounds healed cleanly within a few days, you were deemed innocent. You glance at your hands, imagining the burn. Some of the crew scoff, others nod solemnly. Historians still debate whether these trials were common practice or the exaggerated fears of outsiders who misunderstood Viking law. But the truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. Later you witness a minor conflict unfold. A younger warrior accuses another of damaging his shield during a sparring match. The exchange is tense but measured. The accused admits the blow but denies fault, insisting the shield was weak to begin with. Voices rise slightly, heads turn, but no weapons are drawn. A few older crewmen step in, not to silence them but to mediate. Eventually an agreement is made. A shared meal and a repaired strap will settle the matter. It's a quiet reminder that cooperation was essential to survival, even when tempers flared. As the sun rises higher, the lessons shift to a more mundane, though equally surprising topic: hygiene. You find yourself helping carry buckets of water from a nearby stream, used for washing clothes, scrubbing hands, and even rinsing mouths. Contrary to popular myth, Vikings were remarkably clean. The captain chuckles as he lifts a carved wooden comb from a leather pouch. "We bathe more than some kings," he says, grinning. "At least we can smell our enemies coming." You learn about the log or bathing day, when heated stones were dropped into cauldrons and the ship's crew would strip down in makeshift saunas on land. Scented oils, rendered from herbs and animal fat, were rubbed into beards and scalps to ward off lice and keep the hair manageable. One warrior boasts about braiding his beard each morning to keep it from tangling in the wind or in someone's axe. You scrub grime from your hands at the river's edge, the water shockingly cold but invigorating. As you glance up, you spot a small bird nesting beneath a tangle of reeds. A tiny wren barely larger than your palm, darting in and out with bits of down and twig. You watch it for a long moment, struck by the fragility of life in such a harsh world. The bird doesn't know of raids or laws or gods. It simply lives, and somehow that makes it sacred. Evening descends slowly, the sky painted in soft hues of purple and orange. The crew settles in, voices low and familiar, their movements slow with exhaustion but touched by peace. Someone passes around a small flask of honeyed mead. Another tunes a lyre and hums a haunting melody, something about the sea taking but also giving. The rhythm of the song mirrors the rise and fall of the tide, as though it belongs to the ocean more than to the men who sing it. You lie back on the wooden deck, feeling the steady sway of the ship beneath you. The laws and customs, the rituals and routines, they're all threads woven into the fabric of this demanding yet strangely comforting life. The stars appear one by one as if drawn from the sea itself, and the scent of salt and worn oak fills your lungs. Your eyes close, carried gently by the rhythm of the sea and the quiet murmur of friendship. The sky is a cool slate gray when you wake, the Longship slicing through calm waters under a light drizzle. Droplets bead on the sail's surface and patter gently on your cloak, the air damp and heavy with the scent of brine and wet wood. The rhythm of the oars is slow today, no urgency, only the steady beat of a vessel made for endurance rather than haste. A gull circles above, its lonely cry briefly piercing the hush. Today you learn about the Viking diet, not just the tough dried meats and hard bread, but the surprisingly varied foods that fueled these seafarers. You hadn't expected variety. In your mind, Viking meals were crude and meager, survival rations at best. But what you discover over the course of the day reshapes that image entirely. You sit with the cook near a small wind-shielded fire that crackles and hisses with wet fuel. A shallow iron pot rests over the coals, its contents slowly bubbling. Inside simmers a thick stew, root vegetables like turnips and carrots, pieces of salted fish flaking apart, and sprigs of foraged herbs, wild thyme and wood sorrel. The aroma is earthy and hearty, a welcome comfort after days of bland fare and cold fingers. The cook stirs slowly with a carved wooden ladle, explaining each ingredient like a storyteller introducing characters in a saga. He shares stories of Viking gardens, carefully tended plots behind longhouses where even the most rugged warriors would kneel to sow seeds. Onions, cabbage, peas, leeks. Hardy plants, built to withstand chill winds and short growing seasons. You imagine a small coastal farm clinging to the edge of a fjord, green patches battling rock and frost, coaxed to life by hands calloused from more than just swordplay. A quirky detail surfaces as the cook offers you a small wooden spoon coated with a sticky golden glaze. Birch syrup, he says, his voice half proud, half teasing. Takes hours to boil down, but it sweetens better than honey when honey's hard to find. The syrup is thick, smoky, and subtly sweet. You imagine it mingling with the salt of dried fish or drizzled lightly over porridge. It's a small indulgence, yes, but one that hints at creativity, at a desire to make the harsh livable, even pleasurable. Historians still debate how widespread such practices were, especially on long voyages where fresh produce was scarce. Some believe these touches were luxuries saved for landfall. Others argue that skilled cooks and clever storage allowed for more diverse meals than expected. You ponder the challenges of keeping food edible for weeks at sea. Meat salted or smoked to last, butter packed in barrels, dried berries rehydrated in stew, ale replacing water when the latter turned foul. There's ingenuity in every bite. As the day unfolds, you observe quiet rituals around mealtime. Before eating, a few crew members bow their heads, not to a god perhaps, but in a simple gesture of thanks. Bread is passed hand to hand, broken and not cut, each piece offered with eye contact and a small nod. Rations are counted carefully, portions measured not with greed but with the quiet math of survival. Even the youngest among them knows, a meal today must not cost a meal tomorrow. Later, bellies warm and spirits lifted, you join in a quiet game of taffel, a strategy board game played on a carved wooden grid, the corners worn smooth by years of use. The pieces are small tokens, simple pawns and a single king piece which must escape capture. You face a grizzled warrior with nimble fingers and a sharp grin. At first, you lose quickly, trapped by the opposing pieces before you realize what's happening. But with time you learn. Patience, positioning, foresight. The game becomes more than a pastime. It's a lesson in thinking several steps ahead, in anticipating both threat and opportunity. It's easy to see how such skills translated from board to battlefield. The evening draws close, the sky softening to pastel pinks and blues. A fine mist hangs over the horizon, the sun barely visible as it dips low behind distant hills. The Longship rocks gently in the calm water, the rhythmic creak of wood mingling with the low hum of conversation. One crewman begins a slow, tuneless hum. Another picks up the rhythm by tapping a knife against his bowl. It isn't music in the usual sense, but it carries with it the warmth of familiarity and repetition, of men who've weathered many such evenings. You lie down, the scent of damp wood and earth filling your senses. Your bed is simple, a cloak, a folded blanket, your travel bag beneath your head. But your body is warm, your belly full, and your mind buzzing with the tastes, sounds, and rituals of the day. The birch sweet stew, the hushed mealtime gestures, the quiet triumph of finally capturing the king in taffel. All of it settles over you like a second blanket. Sleep comes quietly, wrapped in the steady pulse of the sea and the warmth of shared experience. Morning arrives with a gentle mist hovering over the water, softening the edges of the Longship and the distant coastline. The pale light filters through the fog like a silken veil, turning the sea into a glassy expanse where sky and water seem to merge. You wake slowly, muscles still tender from the voyage, the weight of the past days settling into a deep, steady calm. The air is cool and damp, carrying the faint, comforting sense of salt, pine needles, and the lingering smoke from last night's fire. Today you reflect on the bonds formed aboard, the friendships, rivalries, and unspoken understandings that stitch the crew together like the threads of a well-worn sail. Around you, the men move with quiet purpose, their motions practiced and smooth. Some haul ropes with practiced strength, the coarse fibers rough against calloused hands. Others sharpen tools and weapons on whetstones, sparks glinting briefly in the dim light. Near the galley, a few prepare the next meal, chopping dried meat and mixing coarse grain porridge, their voices low but steady. The rhythm is soothing, a reminder that even in the harshest environments, life finds its steady pulse. You watch a pair of warriors exchange a small ornate arm ring, worn but carefully maintained. The gesture feels solemn, weighted with meaning. A curious fact emerges. Viking warriors sometimes exchanged gifts like weapons, jewelry, or carved tokens to seal bonds of loyalty. These tokens weren't just trinkets but carried deep meaning, symbolizing trust, mutual respect, and the unspoken vow to stand together in battle and beyond. Historians still debate how formalized these exchanges were, whether part of elaborate ceremonies or informal gestures between friends, but their significance in Viking culture is undeniable. Nearby, laughter breaks out over a joke about a particularly stubborn knot, and you smile, reminded of the many small moments that have lightened the burden of the journey, whispered superstitions about sea spirits, shared songs hummed low around the fire, and the quiet camaraderie that blossoms in shared hardship. These are the threads that hold the crew together, making this demanding life not just bearable but, in its own rugged way, meaningful. As twilight descends, the mist begins to lift and the sky fades from dusky gray to a deep, velvety navy. Stars begin to sprinkle across the heavens, their light reflecting in tiny pinpricks on the water's surface. You lie back on the deck, the wood worn smooth beneath you, cool but comforting. The ship rocks gently, cradling you in its timeless embrace. Around you, the mingling scents of salt, pine resin, and faint smoke mingle, an invisible tapestry that carries the memory of your journey. Your eyelids grow heavy, the soft murmur of the crew settling into a calm, steady rhythm that fades into a gentle hum. The steady pulse of the sea and the quiet strength of the Longship carry you toward rest. Now, as you drift off, imagine the waves lapping softly against the hull, the whisper of wind in the sails, and the ancient stories whispered in the dark.